Hello and welcome to this wonderful event that introduces not only how we can use Jolly Phonics and Jolly Grammar in a really proactive way, not only with native speaking children, but also children in other countries. And I'm delighted this morning to introduce Mr. Chris Jolly, the publisher of Jolly Phonics and Jolly Grammar, who will be giving us an insight into the origins of Jolly Phonics, where we are now and where we are going. And it's such important information for you as teachers to be able to see the progression and the projection of not only the materials, but also children's learning. And I really am delighted that we've got Jay Richardson from his online channel, YouTube, English with Jay, and he is the director of his academy, which is EAC, Learning in Thailand, but also he is a wealth of information, not only about methodology, but actually practical implementation of the materials, which is what he's going to share with us this morning. So let's go straight into meeting Chris, and thank you very much for sharing your time with us this morning, Chris, and we're very much looking forward to your presentation. So go ahead, Chris.
Great, and Yvonne, thank you very much, and Jay too. I'm really delighted to be here. So I'm speaking to you based from the UK, but Thailand is somewhere which I feel that I've known for a long time. I was way back. I was a teacher in Malaysia for 2 years, and so I used to travel up from Malaysia all the way through Hat Yai and up through Thailand to Bangkok and back again during school holidays. And of course, I got a great affection for the place. I'm delighted that Jolly Phonics is so widely used in private schools in Thailand, particularly around Bangkok. But I'm also very keen that we should extend the use of Jolly Phonics widely across the country so that children in all schools, private and government schools, can be enabled to learn English, learn to be able to read and to write it, and so to be able to achieve. So what I'll do today is I will take you through a bit of background about where we've come from, what the program is about, and what some of the evidence for it, and how you can become more knowledgeable and more effective in using it. So let me share my screen and take us through it. So, Jolly Phonics. Jolly Phonics has made a great difference. It has changed the way in which reading is taught in English. Historically, if phonics was used, it was the alphabet and then memorization. But now we talk about letter sounds, not letter names. So perhaps in English it's unusual we have both. The names are A, B, C, and so forth, but the sounds are A, B, K, and so on. Now, there are two other things. So there's the three main features, not just the sounds, but what I put there is blending for reading. This means that we will use those sounds as the main way to read a new word. If I take a word dog, you'll sound out the letters that you can see, D, O, G, and then blend them to form dog. And for spelling, it's the reverse. Now you have the spoken word dog, and you break it out into the sounds, D and O and G. And that means you can then write each of them, and so spell the word. And the result, as I say, children learn to read much faster. They all have ability to succeed, and they have a lot of, particularly with Jolly Phonics, they have a lot of fun in doing so. We've got a dynamic environment where change is always taking place. We have a new logo, we have new designs for the materials, and we have new products. And I've put there 3 of the new reading series that have come out relatively recently: the Little Word Books, the Orange Readers, and Our World Readers. And I'll show you just a few more later on. But just to start at the beginning, the program was developed with two authors, Sue Lloyd and Sarah Werner. And I first met Sue Lloyd way, way back. And she was explaining to me that she got very good results, but that she couldn't find anyone to listen. If you like, if she got good results, she wasn't a problem. So they didn't, but her point of view was that it wasn't because she was a good teacher, although she was, it was because of what she did. It was how she did it. It was the method. And therefore it was transferable to others. And Sarah Werman was a young teacher in the same school. And so together we've taken this forward. So I met her all that time ago, over 30 years ago. And we then piloted her ideas as a research project in a school. And then we launched the Phonics Handbook 30 years ago. And it was an enormous success right away. It got featured on breakfast television, but it caught the moment when people felt that phonics was what they needed, and this looked like a good way of doing it. Then several years later, it had a very formative study on the teaching of reading in Clackmannanshire in Scotland, where it was found that children learned twice as fast with Jolly Phonics. And still to this day, the Clackmannanshire study has been the most formative of all studies on the teaching of reading in a crowded field. Some years later, 8 years later, synthetic phonics, which is the name given for this kind of teaching, became policy for the UK. And so Jolly Phonics was then mainstream, and of course there are other programs out there as well. And then as a later development, grammar became accepted as part of the curriculum for the subsequent years, so that once children had learned phonics, they moved on to grammar, meaning the wider literacy of spelling, punctuation, grammar itself, and being able to be much more accurate and literate and extensive in using the language. So this was the book that we first published, the Phonics Handbook. And as you can see, the children look like they're having a bit of fun. So that's interesting. And we had that wonderful quote that you see at the bottom there, which I thought at the time had been slightly over the top, Dear Alice, but actually it has turned out largely to be the case, that this is a book that has indeed changed the course of educational history. Now here's just an example in a school to show the kind of teaching, particularly for the letter sounds. So what you can see is that this teacher, who's Annette, is teaching this letter sound. Now where we have two letters making one sound, we call it a digraph. And here, Annette has been telling the children how that they're to pretend they're sailors on a ship, and they have to salute. And when they salute, they say, aye, aye. Now, as you can tell, the children have a fairly funny idea of what a salute is. Their hands can be all over the place. But actually, if you look, they're all engaged and they're all saying what they've been asked to say. So they will remember it. And they're saying, aye, aye. And that gives some idea of the fun of the program. Now that photo was actually taken in the Clackmannanshire study, and it had schools that used Jolly Phonics and schools that followed the national guidance. It took a year, and for Joyce Watson, it was her doctoral thesis. It was the program that she used and wrote up about in achieving her doctorate, with Rona Johnson as her supervisor. And what we found was that whereas both groups completed the project with the children having an average age of 5 years and 8 months, in the control group, they had matched that, they'd kept pace, their reading age at the end of the 12 months was also was 5 years, 8 months. But for the schools and the classes that used Jolly Phonics, the children had learned twice as fast, and they now had a reading age of 6 years and 8 months. And so they had learned twice as fast, and they had a reading age that was 12 months ahead of their chronological age. And these are results that I've seen repeated in other studies. I do not know of studies where comparable figures have not been achieved. So as you can imagine, it had a huge impact at a time when people were concerned about literacy, which of course they do a lot of the time, so no surprise there. But this did produce a remarkable level of interest in the media. Nonetheless, it took some time before this kind of teaching got accepted as government policy. And what we found was what I've mentioned here, that the children learned twice as fast compared with just learning the alphabet and word memorization. But we also found that all children did well, that we were not losing some of them down the way. The children who did not have English as their first language kept up just the same as the others. The children came from homes that were not especially supportive. So for instance, there weren't a lot of books there. They were doing just fine. And we found that boys did as well as girls, which had not been the case before. Now, let me just tell a bit more about new products. So as I mentioned, this is a dynamic. We're constantly introducing new products. The bumper book has been a wonderful resource for teachers of ideas for teaching letter sounds, teaching blending, letter by letter. The Jolly Plays at the bottom, again, a wonderful exercise for children to pretend to put themselves in a position of play and acting with vocabulary they can read and learn and know for themselves, but interesting stories. And then the little word books, those are very early readers when children have learned their letter sounds and now learning letters and words to read. And then the Our World readers is one of the readers we have, and interesting because it's about things that are happening around the world. And in those you can see we're just taking drums in different cultures. So ideas coming through there. I'd just like to say a bit now about training. It is obviously very important to be able to understand the concepts and how to implement them in practice, to get ideas for having to do that, and to feel that you're on solid ground, that what you're doing is reliable, and to be able to enter discussion with those who don't feel so secure about it and be able to support them. So one of the ways is to read the manuals we've got. There's a Jolly Phonics teacher's book that you can see there. There's the Phonics Handbook that I showed earlier. Another thing that can be done is to go and see all that we have on our website. So there's a tab called Resources, and then within that, this one you see here, Phonics and Grammar Teaching Guides. And there's a whole host of them there. So just being able to delve into that and pick up ideas, that's really helpful. Then there's lecture training from a trainer. So that's really what we're doing here. It might be in a meeting like that, or it could be online. And this has the advantage that there's a much more personal dynamic to it. You can get an idea of people's impressions, you can ask questions. And of course, it's what we typically think of in terms of training. Another alternative is to take an online course. And we have these through CPD College, where courses that we have developed with them, which you can take. There's much more content there than elsewhere, and of course it's well organized. The course takes 20 hours and it's a paid for course. And you'll be able to see there that we have it in British English or in American English or for Australia, and we have other programs as well. And then finally, I'm inviting you to explore what our competitors do. And I do feel that you're most strong in understanding this teaching and being able to use it if you can see it from other people's points of view. And you can ask yourself from competitors, well, are they different in their advice from what we are? And to be able to give some sense of judgment. There may be areas that you feel that they do better than us in whatever way, or you can just pick up ideas that are teaching tips. But from my point of view, we feel that we have done it very well, and that's the feedback we get. But it's still helpful to see it widely. And I do see that teachers who have looked at it very widely feel the most secure and can have particular confidence in their teaching, and of course draw ideas in doing so. So that's really covering something on training. And I hope that's given you a good idea of where we are, where we're going, that we're very committed to enable children everywhere to be able to read and to write English. And for somewhere like Thailand, it is about them needing to have a fluency in English as well as in Thai. And for English, it will enable them to have a broader engagement with the world, with professions, and with the information of the world, and to travel and so forth. So that's really an outline for me, and it's been a delight to be with you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Chris. And one of the most important things I've picked up on your talk is the versatility of using the resources in English as a second language classroom, not only as a standalone resource, but also one that can be very compatible with other resources. And one experience I will say for teachers is the more you use it, the more you will find it fits into your style of teaching, and additionally your curriculum. So it's good that we have all of these resources. And the teacher's book, which covers 3 years, Chris, is amazing. You know, it's taken a lot of the stress out of understanding the dynamics. But once you start using it, and as Jay is going to show you now, you can amplify it to fit your curriculum, your teaching hours, and also where you want your children to be with English. So this is a really good way now to lead into Jay, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have to show us, Jay. So please go ahead.
Thank you. So it's a truism that people rarely prepare to fail. It's not something that as a teacher we ever do, but what most teachers do is fail to prepare. And today I want to talk about this. I want to talk about how we can, as teachers, prepare activities in order to ensure success. Okay, in order to create an environment or a situation in your classroom where you're succeeding. And it creates a loop. All right, so success breeds success. That's a truism. Now, I'm going to share some very simple ideas today, and they're informed by some very, very fundamental teaching concepts, such as the retention rates pyramid here, that how students retain things. Today's not going to be focused on that. That's not what I want to talk about. If you're interested, you can go and look into that. I'm also very much informed by Bloom's taxonomy, which again is not the point of today's lesson. As a teacher, if you're interested in this, or as someone that's an educator, you can go and look into this. Today's not a Jolly Phonics lesson. It's a concept of how to structure your activities to ensure success, therefore breeding confidence. Probably the most important thing that I'll keep referring back to today is Paretos Law, this 80-20 rule. If you're not familiar with this, again, it's not today's content, but what Paretos Law implies is that 80% of your productivity comes from 20% of your efforts. I like to use this in all aspects of my planning. So an example would be when I'm planning any lesson at any age level with any content, 80% of my time is spent recycling, rehashing, reviewing, consolidating, ensuring that students are built up. So when it comes to the 20% of the challenge of the day, they're able to grasp that challenge with confidence. Okay, now what I want to also briefly refer to is that in the examples I'm going to show you today, I'm working with very small groups and very young learners, but that's just a product of the situation we're living in right now. I'm unable to have big groups. However, everything we do is applicable to big groups, and everything I do is applicable to all ages, all levels. Okay, so let me give an outline of what I want to talk about today. I've told you what it's not about. Let me tell you what it is about. I want to break today's content down into 3 very brief sections. I'll try not to spend too long on each, so we don't check out. Number 1, I want to give everybody an overview of how I structure activities, kind of like my teaching theories, how I use my time with a student or a learner to ensure success. But I found that just talking in vague theoretical terms isn't appropriate. It doesn't really grasp the teacher's attention. So I would like to then give you 2 very, very specific and explicit examples of this theory in work, in action. I'll do one using a Jolly Phonics activity, and I'll do another one based on Jolly Grammar. Now, this is not a lesson plan talk today. This is an activity structure, and it's about a mindset. That's what I want to really talk about. So what I do is I like to turn these triangles, these pyramids, upside down. All right. I like to flip it the other way because I like, in my mind, I like to use the word funneling. I'm trying to funnel my students to a point, a learning point, an activity, a piece of knowledge. And you can call it scaffolding. You can call it a bunch of different things. And I basically use 3 basic steps: a lead in, a refine, and a focus before you hit your teaching objective. And you'll see that on the left side, we have increasing level of challenge for student as we go through these points. Because it's very important to remember the title of today's talk, Preparing for Success. All right? What I mean by this is teachers who are not preparing for their activities to be successful lose confidence in their own abilities to challenge their students with new activities. And also, appropriately, the student loses confidence in their own ability to achieve things. Like I said, success breeds success, confidence breeds confidence. The more you as a teacher are able to have success doing challenging activities with your students, the more you'll be prepared to do that again. Right? And I feel that the Jolly theories, the Jolly Phonics, Jolly Grammar, they really help with this way of structuring activities. Now let me change the graphics here, okay? Because what I like to think of is the idea of walking to my teaching objective. I don't just jump in at my teaching objective. You've got to lead up to it. All right, through various multisensory, kinesthetic, verbal or audio, kinesthetic, visual approaches. Okay, so let's change the graphic to be a more linear line, like this. So the lead-in, the title of the lead-in at the top there is leading into your subject in a way that will guarantee success for you and the student, not jumping to your objective. Now the notes at the bottom say it's not a challenging moment here. Don't forget Paretos Law, right? We're in the 80 here. We're in the 80 of the 80-20. It's review. There's no new content being presented at the moment. It should be engaging. Engaging is another word for fun, interesting. Yeah. If you hit any roadblocks here, just backtrack. Just go back to any previous accomplishments you've had, and make sure you always go back to your basics. And you'll see what I mean. I mean, today's not a Jolly Phonics or a Jolly Grammar lecture. But if you know your Jolly Phonics, you'll know there's lots of cues. There's visual cues, there's audio cues, there's signals you can use to implicate a sound or an action, right? Always go back to your previous success. Ensure again that your student is understanding where you're at, and then move forward. And then when you move forward, you start refining your content. You develop your content or your activity towards whatever your ultimate target or teaching objective is. Now, the notes at the bottom there, this part is slightly more challenging. You're demanding a little more of your students here. You're asking them to exhibit multiple skills. They might know certain aspects of the syllabus. If it's grammar, they might know noun and verb or adjective. But if you're building up to adverb, you need to make sure that they're able to demonstrate their ability to use previous knowledge and skills combined. With phonics, it would be a blending. You'd make sure they're able to demonstrate their ability to put two sounds together before you're asking them to do 3 sounds or 4 sounds or 5 or read a sentence. All right? We're still in the 80 of 80-20 when you're doing a new activity. Now we start focusing. Now we start moving out of the 80 and into the 20. We're going to start focusing your activity to the ultimate skill you're looking to practice, introduce, reinforce. At the bottom note there, students should now be right on the edge of their prior knowledge or their prior skill. There should be lots of teacher modeling here. This is where your basic EFL, ESL skills as a teacher are coming in now. Modeling, yeah, don't forget your basics as a teacher. And then success. You are accomplishing your target, your teaching objective. Students are now demonstrating their new knowledge independently with very little or minimal teacher intervention or assistance. Okay, don't forget, we're talking about preparing for success. You're not trying to test the students at every point. What you are trying to do, though, is assess them at every point. So as you're working through this walkthrough of these procedural steps, if you notice that your students are over challenged at any point, you as a teacher should be assessing here. Have I pushed them too far too quick? Are they not confident in their basics? Or have they just simply forgotten and need a reminder? There's a big difference between not knowing and forgetting, right? If a student's forgotten a new vowel, it doesn't mean they don't know the vowel. They might need a hint, the et vowel, or if it's a common or a proper noun, they might need a slight hint to remind them of where they're at. And the beauty of this kind of planning or this kind of activity structure is you can be constantly assessing them in a non-threatening way, all right? So let's get into an actual example. Enough theory, enough overview, yeah? Let's look at an actual phonics activity. Now, what I said was we need to have a target or a learning objective, right? So let's be specific. Let's be very, very specific. Let's not beat around the bush. In the example, I want to show you what is my teaching objective. Well, I've written it out for you. It's very straightforward. I wish to have my students complete an independent pair work activity with little to zero teacher assistance in order to demonstrate their knowledge, blending skills, segmentation abilities, listening, and recognition of all group 1 sounds. SATIPN, or I'm not going to teach you Jolly Phonics today. That's a given that we've read the books, we've read the handbook. In this way, this is important, in this way, the teacher can give authentic assessment without stress or anxiety on the part of the student, and indeed build confidence during the assessment period. This is opposite to what happens, right? Most teachers have got this all backwards. They think I'm a teacher, I teach and then I test, I teach and then I test. And that just creates anxiety, which is demonstrably the largest barrier. Performance anxiety is the largest barrier to performance success in a student. Whereas if the student thinks that they're just doing games and activities, the assessment is stress-free. Now, don't forget the concept of summative and formative, right? Most teachers go with the summative assessment because it's easy. You teach and give an exam, you teach and give an exam. The formative assessment, assessing and reflecting during the actual process of teaching, is far more powerful than an exam, far more authentic. So let's get specific, okay? Let me go back to my original graphic. Lead-in. What am I going to do for a lead-in? Okay, very simple. We're not talking complicated ideas here. We're just talking planned and considered structure. A simple fly swat activity reviewing the 6 sounds already covered. SATIPN. The simple activity is also funneled in itself. So what I mean is this simple fly swat activity also has levels. I'm going to begin with a simple single letter identification, single sound ID. Then I'm going to add a vowel to that to make sure they can do vowel consonant, the VC rule. Then I'll add a consonant vowel consonant. Yeah, I might even add a consonant cluster at the beginning or the end. But I'm not just jumping to the words I need them to read. I'm building up to it, reminding them so they're confident. Okay, now let's look at the single sounds. The students I'm working with today are kindergarten 2. It's very, very important to remember but to keep in mind, these students have only been studying with me about 5 sessions or 6 sessions at this point. They're very, very new to this. And I'll be turning the cameras off because I want to share the video, optimize the video clip, okay? And just have a quick look and see how we very quickly move through the sounds. Okay, and the first sound is, whoa, very good. Sound number 2, ah. Sound number 3. You can do it, Priya, as well. Sound number 4, eh. Okay, the videos are all very short, just to give you an example of how we run with it. So my next part of this is the VC. I'm just going to check they can do VC blends. You'll notice if a student struggles, which they do, they get a vowel wrong, the at or the et they mix up. That might be because they've been studying with American accent teachers who say their vowels slightly differently to us. It might be that it's not clear to them. I don't panic. I go back to my basics. I give them the action to remind them, to see if they are still able to recall that information, and we move forward. But I always make sure we're achieving success before I move forward. Good. Bria, sound is an. Bria, go. Good. Gone. In. Good. Bria. At. Oh, I said et, not at. Can you show me et? Like this? Et. Good girl. Now, I gave her about 2 to 3 seconds to check that she was able to recall it. She wasn't able to recall it in time. I gave her help. I'm helping segment the sounds as well. It's not cheating. I'm helping them achieve success by segmenting the word for them. Moving on to 3-letter words. Don't forget, this is only 5 sessions into our syllabus. This time, Bria, 3 sounds. You ready? You ready? 3 sounds. At, sat. Very good. Gone. Put my glasses on. You ready, gone? 3 sounds. It, pit. What? Plastic high 5. Boom. Excellent. Bria, you ready? Et, net. Et. Et. Good, good. Plastic high 5. Now, you can see I immediately went back to my fundamentals, my basics. Hand gesture. I was allowing her 2 to 3 seconds to get her working memory. It wasn't there. I assisted. That's not, like I say, cheating. That is ensuring success. I don't want this activity to become a negative experience for these children. They need to feel that they can do this. If I'm constantly having to give the signal, or I'm constantly having to sound count for them, I would assess formatively they're not ready for the bigger activity. And then I would loop back to a review. The point is, you don't plow forward with your content. You prepare for success. Okay, it's not a competition. And as professional teachers, you're empowered to make that call, right? My students are not ready for this. You need to reassess. You go and have a peer group conversation, talk to your team, ask them how you could help these students develop. All right. The next thing that we do after this is we move forward. So I move the students over to the tables, and I've given them the wonderful, I love these little magnet letters, they're really useful. And it's teacher-led, it's still not student-led. We're still in the 80 of the 80-20. This is something we've done before. The activity you just saw, we've done before. Teacher-led dictation of group 1 words, with teacher helping segmentation of sounds by reading clearly to ensure success, and slowly building the complexity up. I'm not just picking words at random. I'm beginning with easier words and slowly increasing the complexity. I will be skipping through some of these videos just to give you a flavor of the procedure. All right, so it's not going to be the whole video. You only need to see 10 or 20 seconds to see where we're going with it.
It. Tuck it on, you look yourself. Answer is it. Well done. Please show me the word at. Well done. 2 for 2. Please show me the word an.
So we've done the vowel consonant. We're slowly moving up to consonant, vowel, consonant. Moving through the word group of group 1. It's in the Jolly Phonics word book, right? The book of words that tell you what they can read with each group. Now we're up to initial consonant clusters. And they've done fine here. Move it back.
Stop, listen. Span, span, span. Span.
See, I had to give a slight cue there with the vowel. So I made the mental note that vowels might need reviewing a bit later on. At it, where we've got up to. And then we end the session with the final consonant cluster.
Pant. Good. Well done. Tell us very quickly.
Okay, and at that point, I then helped them practice segmentation, because final consonant clusters are by definition harder than initial, because you have to split the word into different sections because the vowel comes in a different place in the word. Okay, so then I moved on to slightly more student-led now. Now we're at the edge of our Paretos 80, the 80-20, student-led dictation activity, where the teacher is going to model the thinking process. What I'm doing here now is I'm letting the students read words to me, and I create the word on the whiteboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pantomime, go through the pantomime of thinking through it. I'm going to look up and pretend to listen. I'm going to segment. I'm going to sound count and compile the word for them. And am I going to cheat? Yes, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to totally cheat. I'm going to look through the card when they're holding it and read the word, so I know what they're reading. So if they do make mistakes, I can assist them. Say, was that at or at? Can you say it again? And ensure that they feel that they've read the word wonderfully to me. And if I've assessed that there's an issue, I won't be moving forward. All right, because we need to succeed here. So this is to me, I find this is where it becomes very empowering. Before this point, it's been quite receptive. They've been asked to listen to me a lot. Now they're producing and they're being productive. Okay. Again, I won't show the whole video. I'll skim through it quite quickly.
Thank you so much. Well done. Now, Bia, please pick up this word and have a look. You can look as well. Can you read that word to me, please? An. Am I correct?
Yes.
High five. Oh, fist bump. Go on. Please read this word to me. What does it say? At. Am I correct? Oh, show me. Oh, thank you. You can put them down now. Bria, your turn.
And we move through this in the same procedure with slowly building up word complexity. Ensuring the students are doing it as confidently as can be expected, given that we've only done 4 or 5 or 6 quick sessions. Okay, then, now the final goal. This is the goal and the goal of what we're looking for. This is the activity I stated as my target. Student 1 to student 2, classic ESL structure for a game. Student 1 talks to student 2 talks to student 1. They create language between the two of them, and I am curating at this point. I'm there to ensure success. I'm there to ensure anxiety levels don't rise. And that's my job. That's what you call a classic student-centered activity, where the teacher becomes the smallest person in the room. That should be the objective of all capable teachers in my mind. If you're doing ESL, that is. Keep it, be specific. Okay, so I'll just optimize the video.
Yeah, please pick up a word from me. We've never done this before. This word here, pick one up for me. And read it to God. What does it say?
It.
Can you please show Bria what word she's holding? Is he correct? You can show Bria now?
Correct.
Well done. You can put this down right here. Go on, pick up a word and read it to Bria. A or e? An. Can you show Bria the word? Bria, are you correct? Well done. Thank you. Word number 3.
And again, it works very much like the other procedures, slowly increasing word complexity. And the students are able to have
Thank you,
success.
Bria. Go on, last one. One more time. What's the first one? Ah. Oh, that's good. Pat. Is that right? Yeah. Please pick up.
Okay. So there was obviously some assessment there to be done. That it wasn't a perfect activity, but the students certainly had success. I assessed that one of them had slightly more issues blending and was slightly confused in the at and the et sound, which I do think comes from having a different accent as his main teacher. And the other student was very good at decoding and encoding. Yvonne or Chris, is there anything you want to discuss at this point, or do you want me to move on to the second example?
No. What I found very interesting in all of those is one, how you're bringing in the confidence for the children. As you said, it's all about establishing that confidence, because what I have noticed in many schools is they tend to rush through this process. It's kind of like getting an objective. But what you're showing is how important it is to be constantly evaluating and assessing before you move on. And also, you mentioned Bloom's taxonomy at the beginning. You've almost flipped that around, like a flipped classroom or blended learning approach, where the children are taking what you've given them and they're building on that. So that is something extremely important, that although these resources look like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, we are building the most valuable pillars of the foundation of using Jolly Phonics with these simple activities that are progressive. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
So just unmuting myself. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
Well, one thing
Yeah.
that I didn't open the talk with is my favorite quote from, I think I mentioned it to you before, Yvonne, it's from Einstein's 1921 lecture in Boston. He said, education is not the learning of facts, it's the training of the mind to think. Now, the old-fashioned way of phonics, the old analytical way of doing like onset rhyme or word shapes or memorization, or what do you call it, sight words, all that stuff, that's not really teaching the kids how to read. That's teaching them what to read, or not how to think, it's what to think. And what I love about this way of doing it is you're giving the children toolkits. You're giving them tools that can then be applied to anything they meet in life. And I don't just mean reading here. I mean, I mean, once a child has had an educational experience that's positive and self-fulfilling and enforce and reinforces confidence and worth, that the after effects of that echo, and I can't overemphasize it really. I mean, if you can go to school and come home feeling you've achieved something, even if it's simply reading some basic words, I think as a teacher, you've done a laudable job. I mean, you've done the best possible job you can do, and that you don't know what you're creating. You don't know what that child's going to be 20 years down the line. And this idea of like fear of learning, you know, and I think that would be the most terrible thing to encourage a child to have, right? You see, for me, giving children the skills and the knowledge to learn things they've never been taught, that's the key to me. And I hope that rings true for teachers watching, you know.
Well, I think it's valuable that teachers will be able to see the progression working in a English as a second language classroom, but also be interested where you stopped, what would be the next stage of where you'd bring those children to. You've got them through all these kinesthetic and multi-sensory activities using visual cues, tactile cues, they've been playing games. You've got them to a point where they're blending, segmenting, they're recognizing letter shapes and the correlation with sounds. What's the next thing you'd bring them up to after what we saw today?
Well, that's just group one. I mean, that's literally in the first. I mean, by the way, I meet these kids once a week. Like, I'm not meeting these kids Monday through to Friday. We meet once a week, those kids anyway. I mean, other kids I meet more regularly, but I mean, I'm an academy. I'm not a Monday to Friday school, but I mean, obviously the ultimate goal is to have children creating text.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal. I mean, you've still got another 6 groups. You've still got digraphs, diphthongs, you've got a whole bunch of stuff to get through, some tricky words. But and then, I mean, what I would love to see is that kind of activity for me, when I walk into a classroom to help work with teachers, to work with a teacher that's struggling, and I maybe go in and sit in the back quietly or try and make notes for them. One of the best, most successful teachers I see, they'll use an activity like that as their standard warm-up. Once the kids know that, you walk in and you say, right, guys, if you're a good classroom manager, get into your pairs, grab your word boxes, sit in pairs, dictate to each other. And that's the first 7 to 8 minutes of your class. While you're just setting up your whiteboard and getting your stuff ready, you've got 10 groups of 2 kids, you've got 20 kids just sitting around the classroom reading to each other. I mean, the ultimate goal is they walk in and say, okay, guys, pick up a book. Where are you up to in your book ladder? You know, have you finished the red books yet? Are you up to your yellow books yet? I mean, we're not talking about comprehension either today, because this isn't about that learning stream. It's a different learning stream. We're talking about an activity creation, but it's really important that people don't think, people like to find barriers, not bridges. People are going to be thinking, well, it's only 2 kids, it's only Jolly Phonics, I don't teach phonics, I teach older, I teach 20 kids. This concept you can expand to any age level. Even when I work with adults in teacher training, I still plan my sessions this way. I'll funnel my point, as we're doing today. I mean, I'm trying to funnel my concept of teaching to an easy, a crystalline point that you can grab hold of. And if you can visualize what you're doing and what you're trying to explain, you become a more effective communicator.
And I think one thing like Chris mentioned earlier on, is the range of resources that are available allows the teacher to elect what fits in best for that teaching plan, with the planning they have, the age groups, the cognitive ability, and the successes that we've had, Chris, I suppose, with all the materials, is the fact now the objectives that are all plainly put there in the handbook and the teacher's book are easy to follow. So although, and you're building on that, Jay, with expanding about how you can use reflective practice, assessment, and methodology to put this in place.
Yeah, it's important for me, you're correct, that we've got all these resources, but you can't be a passive instructor, a passive teacher. You've got to be proactive. You've got to read the handbook. Well, that's number one, I think, on Chris's presentation about read the handbook. Like, you've got to read the handbook. And I remember you asked me a question a while back, Yvonne, in one of our previous chats about, well, once you've got the handbook, do you still plan? So of course you still plan. Like you don't walk into the class with the handbook open and you work through the handbook steps, because this is just best practice example. You have to be an empowered, educated teacher. And you've got all these resources, like a candy shop of things you can pick from, whether it's the word cards with the sounds under them, whether it's the picture cards for sound counting, whether it's the big book, you know, whatever you're working with, the magnets. Nobody's going to do it for you. No product is going to teach for you. You're just, at that point, you're a talker or a teller, not a teacher. I always remind my team that teach is a verb.
Yeah.
It's active. You have to do it. Does that make sense? I mean, that doesn't come across as too strong, but it's very important for me.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned earlier about if you start using the resource, it's the best way to understand how it works with your teaching dynamic, what fits into your planning. And as Chris mentioned earlier, people start with the most basic and then they add on because they can see the value of having the core materials and then kind of like chunking on what they need and how they need. But Chris, people have started with very little and been extremely successful, haven't they? In some of the pilot projects, they've done very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let me move on to kind of echoing back to a question. Once I moved through Jolly Phonics, I naturally work. It was just a natural progression. Jolly Grammar links straight in with it, because you can always use the Jolly Phonics tools and tricks and techniques and style to ensure success with higher level work, right? So I'd like to go back to my third point. Do we still have time for this to get through to the third point?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Chris, are you okay still for time? Another 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the third section I wanted to refer to is about using the exact same structure with Jolly Grammar. Now, in the example I'm going to show, I'm actually working with a kindergarten student. He's a kindergarten 3 boy who's already done Jolly Phonics with me. But the young lad is very capable, very confident, and very sweet and very lovely. And I felt fine that he was able to approach a primary syllabus. And we basically go through the exact same concept. Okay, so again, what's my target? Let's be very specific. Let's not beat around the bush and be very specific. I want the student to understand that a verb is separate from a noun, and the verbs describe what the nouns are doing in our examples. Students will be able to identify simple verbs in a sentence, and that we use the color red to represent the verbs. The students will complete a piece of work from the Jolly Grammar student book to demonstrate their understanding of verbs. So something that's really important, actually, talk about the prep first, is TPR, total physical response. We're not going to talk about it today. If you're interested, look it up or contact me. TPR was Professor James Asher from San Jose University. And Chris, I've often thought I knew a lot about TPR before I knew about Jolly Phonics and Jolly Grammar. But the minute I learned about the Jolly products, I was like, oh, it's TPR. I mean, it totally is. It's audio visual kinesthetic. You know, you're teaching a child a sound or an action or a part of speech using your body language while looking at a color or an action. So to anybody that's a true academic in this, or someone that really wants to delve into it, look into that. It might be something that I'll give a free seminar on at a later point, because I find it very important. So I'm just going to warm up this young lad with a quick TPR game. Yeah, verb, say, do. That's all it is. And it's a great way to prep his mind for the fact we're going to do verbs. And I'll also use some of the verbs that's in the work I need him to complete later for me, because I need him to complete a piece of work.
Cry. Cook. Very nice. Fly. And skip. Do you know how to skip? Like a skip rope? Let me show you. Skip. Skip, skip, and stop. Sit. Stand. Cry. Brush. Hop. Swim. Cook. Fly. Sit down.
Okay, very straightforward, not overly challenging. Like I said, we're still in the very beginning here, okay? We're still in the 80 part of Paretos Law. I'm now going to work into a very simple activity of I Spy as a review of the nouns. All right, because we need to remind him that verbs are not nouns later on. So I need to be sure that he understands and remembers nouns. I Spy is a very simple game and it's very productive. And all you have to remember is what is a noun. It's something you can take a picture of. Let's have a look. I spy with my eyes a noun beginning monkey. I'll link into Jolly Phonics here to help him remember that. I spy with my eyes a noun beginning pig. And again, I won't show too long on this because it's very, very straightforward. Just a very, very 10-second look.
Noun beginning with P. Lives on a farm. Oink, oink.
Pig.
A pig. Yeah. Monkey and a pig. The nouns. I can see a noun beginning with
Moon.
and the moon. Very good.
Okay, that's it. Now, this is something that we do next, that I've spoken with Yvonne about before, about the idea of recycling. There's nothing wrong as a teacher with recycling work you've done and expanding on it. It's very confidence building. The students feel they know a piece of work, they're confident with it, and you expand on it. So we revisit a page we've already completed, but when we learn nouns, and then we increase our knowledge of that piece of work. So we look at this piece of work from the Jolly Phonics book 1, and it's right at the beginning after they've done capital letters and things like this. And we remind where the capital is and the full stop is, and the sentence looks something like this. And he completes the sentence for me. I then ask him to show me the nouns. Yeah, we do the same with the second piece of work from the book. We've already completed this worksheet. There's nothing new here. All right. That's all we're doing is just building his confidence and walking our way to our ultimate goal.
Look at the screen. Can you see? What nouns can you see in the picture?
Duck.
A duck, that's right. You can see a duck, very good. And what is the duck swimming on? Oh, what's this? What's this? Do you remember?
Hawk.
Or almost, yeah. We call it a pond.
Pond.
That's right. And what's the duck doing?
Swim.
That's right. Oh, that's so good, you. And do you remember, is this correct? Pond, as swims, duck, the pond.
No.
That's not right, is it? What's the first letter? How do you know? Because is it a lowercase or capital?
Capital.
It is. And what's the last word? Where's the full stop?
Pond.
Way.
That's it. And we work through the piece of work like I just showed you. Very straightforward. Okay, so we're going to develop our content now. We're slowly and surely going to transition the content into the concept of verbs. And because we've done a fun TPR session, it's not over challenging. We look at the piece of work again and I ask them, what is the duck doing? What are the chicks doing? We show them it's red. And you found that very straightforward, not very challenging at all. And we've already approached the word verbs now. And he doesn't realize that we've changed content.
Now, Jana, we've just learnt that the duck swims on the pond. They're nouns. We do this for nouns. The duck swims on the pond. The chicks run to the nest. What is the duck doing? Is the duck eating? Flying? What does it do?
Swimming.
Swims. Come and point to the word swims. Where is that word? There it is.
Good. And that was it. That was all we had to do. Very straightforward. Now, this is the good bit. I can now label our new knowledge. I can tell him that word, you swim, run, we call them verbs. And they're red. And then we very simply look at one of the big books. I love the big books. They're really good. And we start eliciting. You start eliciting verbs he knows. They're going to be cued in the back of his mind already because we did a TPR. And he even, naturally, picks out cook and things like this, the verbs that we practiced earlier. And they're in the worksheet because I'd prepared for success. Yeah? And that was very, very simple for him. Here he is looking at the big book.
Hey, Johnny, have a look at my big book. What verbs can we see? Can you see anybody sleeping? Where is the verb to sleep? Can you see a bee sleeping? Where is that? That's right. What else can you see? What other verbs can you see for me? Can you remember any other verbs? Any more words of things they're doing?
Cook.
Cook. Well done. Hey, Johnny.
Okay, and that was it. Now we're ready to achieve success. I wanted him to do some work in a book, and I wanted him to do this book. That was it. Page 29. Very straightforward, where I'm asking him to label the verbs at the top, draw verbs that he reads independently in the middle, and then think of 3 of his own verbs. And there he is, young man, having some fun, being very confident with himself. And for those people that are wondering, 2 things. Number 1, all of my videos are authentic. None of them are prepped in advance. None of them are rehearsed. They're genuine students learning genuinely in real time. And this session and my other session were 30 minutes each. Okay, I have the kindergarten 2 kids for an hour a week, but I do 30 minutes of their time doing other streams of language. I do comprehension, and we do vocab and other things. But I spend 30 minutes a week doing phonics with those kids, and 30 minutes once a week with this kid doing grammar. And he completed all of that in 30 minutes. And the next week, I did notice a few things. He wasn't super strong in certain areas. So the week after, we did a rehash of it and a review. And then after that, I constantly pass nouns and verbs with him every time we do anything new from now on, to constantly keep it fresh. If you want to see the raw footage of any of this, by the way, it is on my YouTube channel, English with Jay. There's about 300 videos on there of me doing lots and lots of activities with kids in real time, nothing rehearsed. And you can contact me at Facebook, EAC School. I'll give anyone private help. I do it all the time. People reach out to me regularly, and I always give them private advice, and I give them FaceTime whenever they need it. It's for free. It's not a business in that sense. I don't charge for that stuff.
Well, I think it's incredibly valuable to have the, if you do in the future more Jolly Grammar, because as we know, and Chris will say, we put all this effort into the foundation, but it's so important to continue the trajectory with Jolly Grammar. And it's one of those elements that people think, oh, well, we've got other class books that we can use for the trajectory of Trinity or Cambridge education, the exam component, where in fact the grammar that comes from the Jolly Grammar is the most underpinning knowledge they need for these, not only life skills, but these exams that they're going to do as well. So any future things on grammar would be warmly received, wouldn't they, Chris?
Yeah.
Definitely.
If you'd said to me a year or like a couple of years before I started using these products full time, you would have had a primary 1 kid or a kindergarten 3 kid passing speech. For those that aren't aware, passing is identifying parts of speech, verb, noun, adjective, adverb, pronoun. I would have thought you were insane. I would have not thought it was possible to get kindergarten or primary kids at that age in Thailand, not as their native language, passing verbs, nouns, adjective, adverbs. It's insane. I mean, it's ridiculous how efficient it is. And if you do the, I had to prep some kids for the American, was it the GED or whatever, the General Education Diploma, whatever it was, and there's a lot of passing, and there's a lot of sentence correction work involved. And if they don't have their basic parts of speech fundamentals down, that's like pushing a rock up a hill, as they say in Thai. It's like an idiom in Thai, like Sisyphus' rock. It's overwhelmingly challenging to do that when someone's 16.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'd like to say, Jay, thank you very, very much for all of this morning. Despite the hiccups we had with Facebook Live, we've learned a huge lesson about how the new links that are in place on Facebook don't work as easily as they did before. So that's a huge learning curve for us. And please come back and do some more sessions for us. And I hope the teachers who get to see this recording really enjoy all the information that you have. And the good thing about it being a recording, you can stop and go back and go over it again and watch it as many times as you feel comfortable. So that's a bonus. And Chris, thank you very, very much for joining Jay this morning and giving us your time.
I really appreciate it. Again, my apologies for the hiccups. We'll get it better the next time, but I hope it was informative, and I will definitely be doing more content for you guys as and when you have the time.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Well, Sawadee and Kopkuma, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Jay, thank you.